Hey there, car enthusiasts. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating stories in automotive history. A tale that connects Hollywood, Detroit's golden age, and the most famous crime-fighting vehicle ever built. We're talking about the Lincoln Futura, a $250,000 concept car that ended up being sold for just $1 and eventually became the Batmobile, from the classic 1960s TV series. If you've ever wondered how a handcrafted Italian masterpiece transformed into the Dark Knight's ride, stick around. This story has everything: underwater inspiration, Hollywood glamour, and one of the best deals in automotive history. Let's get into it. The birth of the Futura, 1955, and America's atomic age. To understand the Lincoln Futura, you've got to picture America in the mid-1950s. The Second World War was behind us, the economy was booming, and Americans were looking toward the future with unbridled optimism. The space race was heating up, jet fighters were becoming symbols of modernity, and chrome was king on American roads. This was the era of tail fins and two-tone paint jobs. General Motors' Harley Earl had started the fin craze back in 1948, drawing inspiration from the Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighter plane. By 1955, Detroit's Big Three, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, were locked in a design war, each trying to outdo the others with increasingly dramatic styling. Cars were getting longer, lower, and more outrageous. Virgil Exner at Chrysler was pushing his forward-look design philosophy, and concept cars were becoming essential tools for gauging public taste and showcasing the future of automotive design. Enter Bill Schmidt, the head designer at Lincoln's design studio. Schmidt wasn't just sketching cars at a drafting table. In late 1952, he took a vacation to the Bahamas with Bill Mitchell, who worked under the legendary Harley Earl at General Motors. While diving in the crystal-clear Caribbean waters, Schmidt had an encounter that would change automotive history. He came face-to-face with a shark, specifically a mako shark, and was struck by the creature's sleek, predatory lines and the way it moved through the water. That underwater inspiration became the foundation for the Lincoln Futura. Schmidt wanted to create something that captured that same sense of fluid, menacing grace. When he returned to Detroit, he sketched out his vision: a low-slung, aggressive machine with exaggerated features that looked like nothing else on the road. Schmidt presented his concepts to Benson Ford, grandson of Henry Ford himself and head of the Lincoln Mercury division. Benson had a known weakness for concept cars, and Schmidt's shark-inspired designs immediately caught his attention. The project got the green light, and Schmidt assembled a team including John Najjar, who would later go on to help design the Ford Mustang, to handle body development, with Martin Ragitko taking care of the engineering side. But here's where it gets interesting. Ford decided this car couldn't be built in Detroit. The complex, hand-formed body panels required artisan-level metalworking skills. So they sent a Lincoln Mark II chassis and a 368 cubic-inch V8 engine to Carrozzeria Ghia in Turin, Italy. Ghia was famous worldwide for having the finest craftsmen in the business, men who could hammer metal panels over tree stumps and carved logs to create the flowing, organic shapes that Schmidt had envisioned. The Italian artisans spent months handcrafting every curve and contour. They developed a unique pearlescent white paint using fish scales mixed into the formula, a fitting tribute to the car's underwater inspiration. When all was said and done, the Lincoln Futura cost Ford Motor Company a staggering $250,000. In today's money, that's roughly $2.9 million. For a car that would never see production. For a rolling piece of art. The Futura unveiled, a sensation on the auto show circuit. The Lincoln Futura made its official public debut on January 8, 1955, at the Chicago Auto Show, though the press had been given a preview a few days earlier at the city's Congress Hotel. The reaction was immediate and intense. Even in an era known for wild automotive designs, the Futura stood out as something extraordinary. Let's talk about what made this car so special. The Futura measured just over 52 inches from its double-domed plexiglass canopy to the ground. The chassis sat incredibly low, just 6 inches at the center of the frame and 7.2 inches at the side rails. This thing hugged the pavement like nothing else on the road. The design was pure sci-fi. It featured a double-bubble canopy top made of clear plexiglass that covered both the driver and passenger. Picture a fighter jet cockpit, but on a car. The headlights were housed in exaggerated hooded pods that gave the front end an almost menacing appearance. And then there were the tail fins, massive outward-canted fins on both ends of the car that looked like they belonged on a rocket ship, not a sedan. Unlike many concept cars of the era, which were essentially non-functional sculptures, the Futura was fully operational. It featured a Lincoln engine and complete powertrain. The instrument panel was clean and uncluttered, with controls housed in separate compartments with flexible roll-down doors, very futuristic for the time. It had push-button transmission controls instead of a traditional gear lever, with chrome buttons mounted in a functional pedestal between the front seats. This was cutting-edge stuff in 1955. Safety features were built in too, though they were minimal by today's standards. You had to perform 2 separate operations to shift from reverse to forward gears, and the parking gear control was linked with the roof controls to prevent the canopy from opening while the car was in gear. The Futura became a sensation on the auto show circuit. It appeared in cities across America throughout 1955 and even made a television appearance on the Today Show on March 3rd. Crowds gathered wherever it went. People had never seen anything like it. Some of the design elements from the Futura actually made their way into production Lincolns. The headlight pods and tailfin motifs showed up on the 1956 and 1957 Lincoln models, though in much more subdued form. The car became so popular that Ford released it as a model kit and a toy. Kids across America could build their own miniature Lincoln Futura. It represented the promise of tomorrow, a glimpse of what cars might look like in the space-age future that everyone was so excited about. Hollywood calls, the red carpet years. After its run on the auto show circuit, the Futura was retired to a Ford storage facility. But in 1959, MGM Studios came calling. They needed a flashy, futuristic car for a romantic comedy called It Started with a Kiss, starring Glenn Ford and Debbie Reynolds. There was just one problem: that pearlescent white paint, while stunning in person, didn't photograph well in CinemaScope, the widescreen format MGM was using. So Ford gave the Futura a complete makeover, painting it a bright, eye-catching red. The transformation worked beautifully on film. In the movie, Glenn Ford plays a penniless Air Force sergeant who falls for showgirl Debbie Reynolds. He buys a raffle ticket at a charity event, mainly as an excuse to talk to her, and wins the grand prize, the Lincoln Futura. They get married on a whim and end up stationed in Spain, where the flashy red concept car becomes both a plot device and a symbol of their unconventional romance. The movie wasn't a masterpiece, but it did well at the box office, partly because of the novelty of seeing this incredible car on the big screen. Reynolds and the Futura even made the cover of Life magazine. After filming wrapped, the car appeared in a few Ford commercials, then went back into storage. And there it sat. Behind George Barris's customization shop in North Hollywood, the once proud concept car slowly deteriorated. See, Ford had sold the Futura to Barris, the legendary king of customs, for exactly $1, plus what the legal documents called other valuable consideration. Why so cheap? The car was never titled and couldn't be insured. It was a legal liability just sitting around, so Ford essentially gave it away to someone who might find a use for it. For several years, the Futura just sat there behind Barris's shop, fading and rusting, gathering dust in the California sun. Its glory days seemed to be behind it. The car that had cost $250,000 to build, that had wowed crowds across America and starred in a Hollywood movie, was now essentially worthless, a weird relic from the 1950s that nobody knew what to do with. But fate wasn't done with the Lincoln Futura, not by a long shot. 3 weeks to build a Batmobile, the 1965 transformation. Shunned late 1965, everything changed in a hurry. ABC Television and producer William Dozier were preparing to launch a new TV series based on the Batman comic books. They wanted their show to stand out, and they knew they needed a signature vehicle, something that would rival James Bond's tricked-out Aston Martin DB5 from Goldfinger. They first approached Dean Jeffries, another respected Hollywood customizer. Jeffries started working on a design based on a 1959 Cadillac Eldorado. But here's where it got crazy. The studio suddenly decided they wanted the show on the air by January 1966. That gave them just 3 weeks to deliver a finished Batmobile. 3 weeks. Jeffries had to tell them it was impossible. There was no way he could build a custom car from scratch in that time frame. So they turned to George Barris. And Barris had something Jeffries didn't have, that old Lincoln Futura rusting away behind his shop. When Barris looked at the deteriorating concept car with fresh eyes, he saw something remarkable. The Futura's basic shape, low, aggressive, with those dramatic fins, already resembled the bubble-topped Batmobile that had appeared in the comics during the mid-1950s. The bones were there. It wouldn't require building from scratch. It would require transformation. Barris assembled a team that included Bill Cushenberry to handle the metal modifications, along with a production artist from the TV show and 5 members of his crew. The network gave them a $15,000 budget. The clock was ticking. Working around the clock, the team stripped away the Futura's red paint and began the modifications. They kept the basic shape, but added bat-themed elements everywhere. The nose was modified to create a bat-faced look, with the headlight pods becoming the eyes and ears of a bat. They extended the front with a chain slicer mounted on the nose, practical for crime fighting, they figured. They modified the tail fins and added iconic features. The bat trunk that could hold crime-fighting equipment, a rear-mounted rocket thruster, and all manner of gadgets. The double-bubble canopy was perfect. It already looked like something from the comic books. They painted it gloss black with fluorescent cerise, a bright pinkish red, stripes that would pop on television. A center safety roll bar arch was constructed from alloy steel and equipped with flashing lights. The interior got Scottish grain black Naugahyde bucket seats with horseshoe designs, a center console with the famous power accelerator T-arm, and a custom steering wheel with turn indicator buttons. 3 weeks later, right on schedule, they delivered the Batmobile. It was ready for the show's premiere in January 1966. But here's the brilliant part. Barris didn't sell the Batmobile to the studio. He kept ownership and leased it to 20th Century Fox and Greenway Productions. The car was estimated to be worth about $125,000 in 1966 currency. So that $1 purchase from Ford turned into a gold mine. The Batmobile era, fame, problems, and replicas. The Batman TV series became a massive hit. Adam West and Burt Ward's campy adventures as the dynamic duo captured America's imagination, and the Batmobile became just as famous as the heroes themselves. Kids wanted Batmobile toys. Adults wanted to see the real thing at car shows. It was an instant icon. But the car that looked so cool on TV had serious problems. Remember, underneath all those modifications, it was still a decade-old concept car that had been sitting outside rusting for years. During filming, issues cropped up constantly. The engine overheated. The battery kept dying. The expensive Mickey Thompson tires repeatedly failed under the stress of filming. By mid-season, Barris had to make major changes. They replaced the original Lincoln engine and transmission with parts from a Ford Galaxy. More reliable, easier to service. Even with these changes, the car's top speed was only about 35 to 40 miles per hour. All that footage you see of the Batmobile racing through Gotham City? They sped up the film in post-production to make it look faster. Burt Ward, who played Robin, had some hair-raising experiences in that car. During one shoot, they were filming the iconic scene where the Batmobile races out of the Batcave, the sign comes down, and they make that sharp turn toward Gotham City. As they made the left turn, Ward's door swung open. He managed to catch the gear shift with his little finger, which was the only thing that kept him from being thrown from the speeding vehicle. No seat belts, no safety equipment, just him hanging on for dear life. That's 1960s television production for you. Because of the show's massive popularity, demand for Batmobile appearances exploded. You couldn't send the same car to county fairs in California and car shows in New York simultaneously. So Barris built replicas, 3 of them to be exact, in November 1966. These were constructed on lengthened Ford Galaxy chassis rather than the original Lincoln platform. Each replica had different functions. One had working headlights for close-up shots. Another, designated as Car Number 4, was modified for drag racing exhibitions. It was powered by a 427 cubic inch V8 engine and could actually perform. This car shot flames from its exhaust and could race the quarter mile in 12 seconds. It even had functional parachutes that deployed from the rear. This dragster version was so impressive, it's the only replica that ever appeared in an actual episode of the TV series. You can spot it in the background in the Batcave during the episode The Contaminated Cowl. A third replica was built specifically for promotional tours in the United Kingdom, constructed on a 1958 Chevy Impala chassis. These replicas toured America and beyond, appearing at race meets, county fairs, and any event that would pay to have the Batmobile show up. Barris had turned his $1 purchase into a merchandising empire. Legacy. From concept car to cultural icon. The Batman TV series ran from 1966 to 1968, just 3 seasons, but its impact on popular culture lasted far longer. And the Batmobile was a huge part of that legacy. It influenced every Batmobile that came after it, from Tim Burton's sleek, Art Deco-inspired version in 1989 to Christopher Nolan's military-inspired Tumbler in the 2000s. That rear rocket thruster that fires when the Batmobile starts up, that became a standard feature in almost every subsequent version. George Barris held on to the original #1 Batmobile for decades. He understood its value, both monetary and cultural. In November 2012, Barris announced he was finally selling it. The auction took place at Barrett-Jackson in Scottsdale, Arizona, on January 19, 2013. The bidding war was intense, and when the hammer finally fell, car collector Rick Champagne from Arizona had won with a bid of $4.6 million. Think about that for a moment. Ford spent $250,000 to build the Lincoln Futura in 1955. They sold it to Barris for $1 in 1959. Barris spent about $15,000 transforming it into the Batmobile in 1965 to 66. And in 2013, it sold for $4.6 million. That's got to be one of the greatest returns on investment in automotive history. But what about the Lincoln Futura itself? In some ways, it's been forgotten, overshadowed by its more famous incarnation. Most people don't know the Batmobile started life as a Ford concept car. They don't know about Bill Schmidt's shark encounter or the Italian craftsman at Ghia who hand-formed every body panel. They don't know it starred in a romantic comedy painted bright red years before it became a crime-fighting vehicle. Over the years, several builders have created replicas of the original Futura, trying to recapture that pre-Batmobile glory. Bob Butts, who had worked with Barris on the original Batmobile conversion, actually used molds from one of the Barris-built Batmobile replicas to create a fiberglass replica of the Futura. He essentially reverse-engineered it, removing all the Bat modifications to reveal the original 1955 design underneath. That replica even appeared briefly in the 1990s TV show Viper, where it was involved in a chase scene, a nice bit of automotive history coming full circle. More recently, the team at Gotham Garage featured in the Netflix series Car Masters, Rust to Riches, built their own version of the Lincoln Futura, working from photographs and historical records to recreate the car that most people have forgotten about. The bigger picture, what the Futura tells us about America. The story of the Lincoln Futura is really a story about American optimism and excess in the 1950s. It was an era when car companies spent the equivalent of $3 million on a single concept car just to see if people would like it. An era when designers drew inspiration from sharks and jet fighters and tried to build cars that looked like they could fly. An era of chrome-plated dreams and tail-finned fantasies. The Futura represented peak mid-century automotive excess. It was impractical, expensive, and absolutely gorgeous. It couldn't have existed in any other time or place. The European car companies built elegant, restrained concept cars. The Futura was the opposite. It was American automotive design shouting at the top of its lungs. And then, just a decade later, when that era of excess seemed embarrassing and dated, the Futura found new life as the Batmobile. It went from representing one kind of American dream, the atomic age future, to representing another, the superhero fantasy. From Detroit's vision of tomorrow to Hollywood's vision of justice and adventure. The fact that it sold for just $1 at its lowest point makes the story even better. It shows how quickly cultural values can shift, how yesterday's cutting edge can become tomorrow's embarrassment, and how sometimes the things we cast aside find unexpected new purposes. Bill Schmidt's shark-inspired design lived on in multiple forms. Some of the styling cues from the Futura influenced production Lincolns. The car itself became a movie star, then a superhero vehicle, then a multi-million-dollar collectible. Bill Mitchell, who went diving with Schmidt that day in the Bahamas, took his own shark inspiration and created the Corvette Stingray concepts that led to the iconic 1963 Corvette. That one vacation influenced decades of automotive design. Conclusion: the Futura's lasting impact. And there it is, the complete story of how a $250,000 concept car became the Batmobile for just $1. From the crystal clear waters of the Bahamas to the streets of Gotham City. From the hands of Italian artisans to George Barris's custom shop, the Lincoln Futura lived multiple lives and became multiple things for multiple generations. For car enthusiasts, it's a reminder of an era when concept cars were truly extravagant expressions of creativity and excess. For Batman fans, it's the original Batmobile, the one that defined what the Dark Knight's vehicle should look like. For collectors, it's a $4.6 million piece of automotive history and pop culture. And for historians, it's a perfect portrait of American culture in the 1950s and 60s. Optimistic, excessive, creative, and always looking to the future. The Lincoln Futura proved that sometimes the best stories are the ones that seem too crazy to be true. A designer inspired by a shark. A car built in Italy for an American company. A $250,000 investment was sold for $1. Now I want to hear from you. Have any of you ever seen the original Batmobile in person? Maybe at a car show or in a museum? Or did you grow up watching Adam West and Burt Ward driving this incredible machine? What's your all-time favorite Batmobile, the 1966 TV version, Tim? Burton's 1989 Beauty, the Tumbler, or something completely different? Leave your thoughts and memories in the comments below. These conversations are what make this community so amazing, and I love hearing your stories. If you enjoyed this dive into automotive history and pop culture, don't forget to click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. We have more fascinating car stories on the way, and if you found this video interesting, give it a like. It really helps the channel grow and shows me what kind of content you want to see more of. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Until the next video.